Hi, everybody. My name is Jenifer Joy Madden. I am from durablehuman.com, and I'm going to be your host. I am really excited you're here, and I'm excited for what you're here for, because that's all about our very wonderful babies and toddlers, what makes them thrive, and sometimes what can get in the way of that process. So that's what we're going to be up to tonight. And we are going to be welcoming our guest in just a moment. But what I'd like to do is I'd like to tell you what our plan is for tonight. Have Alyssa's presentation, and then we're going to have questions and answers. And then we are going to have some very nice parent resources after the Q&A that are definitely worth sticking around for, because they're very valuable and they're going to help you a lot. So let me just tell you a little bit about Alyssa. She's our wonderful guest. She is a pediatric speech language pathologist. Now, I looked that up, and that's the same as a speech therapist, but she has a very special population of people that are ages 0 to 3. And she says that she has a family-centered approach to her practice. And that is, she doesn't just focus on the child, the little baby or toddler. She looks at all the interactions within the family and how that might be affecting the whole environment. And as she is going to tell us, she has a new question she asks families. So I'm anxious to hear what that question is in her presentation, which has a fascinating name. It says, of popping bubbles and tossing balls. And that sounds very intriguing to me. So let's welcome Alyssa. And Alyssa, I wanted to tell you that I came prepared with my bubbles.
I love that. Bubbles are one of my favorite toys and tools to use in treatment with kiddos and families. They're great for working on some early developing speech sounds like pop and bubble. They're great for establishing early joint attention and play skills, and they're overall just a fun toy to use. So I'm really excited to be here tonight and talk to you about a topic I'm very passionate about, which is toddlers and how they learn and develop with their caregivers and loved ones.
Beautiful. Well, we're anxious to hear from you. So do you think you can share your screen?
Yes, there we go. Okay, so like Jenifer said, I definitely love bubbles, and any pediatric speech language therapist would tell you that they love bubbles too. But there are some bubbles that we need to be a bit worried about. And I'm going to start by talking about those. And first, we're going to talk about what has changed and why it matters with the introduction of screens into society. So let's take a look at these pictures, and we can start here with the black and white image, and we see that everybody is doing the same thing, right? We're watching good old-fashioned TV together as a family. You can see that the Simpsons are doing it. You can see there's this image from Orange is the New Black where they're clearly all laughing together, laughing at a movie. And then you can see the picture at the bottom where the children and what may be their teacher are all doing the same thing, right? And all these images share something in common where they're sharing whatever the general mutual activity is together, whether it be the TV show or here the children in the bubbles. Co-viewing is what we would call this when everybody is watching the same device. And you can see in the image in the right-hand corner from Orange is the New Black, where they're all sharing a shared emotion together, right? They're laughing at something that happened on in the movie or the TV show. And if we had to imagine that there were bubbles, imaginary bubbles around them, they might look something like this. Everybody that's doing the same mutual activity together is in the same bubble. So if we take a look at what we see more often in today's society, and we looked at what these bubbles might look like. I call them usually social communication bubbles because communication happens with two people. And we see here that the bubbles might look something like this, right? Everybody is on their own device and doing their own thing. There's no shared emotion, right? If we look back to the Orange is the New Black picture, we see everybody was laughing at the same thing, right? They were referencing something. And here there's no shared attention, no shared referencing. And we can imagine that even if there was something going on, maybe a mutual activity outside of this picture, these children on the left-hand side are certainly not going to direct their attention towards that. They're going to stay in this, singular bubble with their device. And what we see in my work a lot is that children miss out on all of the incidental language that happens around them when they are focusing more on a device than they are the things and people around them. I would certainly describe these children as being disconnected. And what we notice when screen use is present in the home is that, right, imagine that me and Jenifer are having a conversation and I'm on my device and she's trying to get my attention. Of course, I don't respond because my attention is directed towards the device. And as human beings, we are, we give and then we want to receive back, right? So Jen is trying to get my attention and I'm not giving it to her because I'm on my device. And now I'm going to stop because I've tried and it's not really worth it. And we see this with parents and children. And I'm going to talk a little bit later about what sort of behaviors happen when we miss those opportunities. But just keep in mind that it is difficult to either get the attention or to want to give your attention to somebody when your attention is dedicated to the device. So if one is distracted, the other will not want to initiate or respond. And if we look at what we want to see these bubbles looking like, we see that parent and child or caregiver and child are in the same bubble, sharing the same emotion, doing the same thing together. And this is how young children learn. And we can see that, one of the benefits that we see in my practice, myself and my occupational therapist colleagues see is something called co-regulation. And that's when the child and the parent are feeling the same way, right? I'm going to talk a little bit about this later, but right, child is looking to mom here for some sort of affirmation in the left-hand side. Mom is smiling, baby is smiling. And that's a really important skill for children to develop because without co-regulation, we can't go on to develop self-regulation. And that's something that we use as adults all the time. So one of the questions that I ask my families now when I'm doing an evaluation or an initial meet and greet is, so what is the screen time use? What does that look like in your house for the parent and the child? And that's going to give me a lot of information about the experiences the child is getting and the communication opportunities that are available to them. So looking at how young children learn best, we know that young children learn best from real life interactions with loving caregivers and the people who matter to them. And when we have that, we have something that happens called serve and return. Oftentimes when I'm talking to parents, I say to picture an imaginary volleyball net that's in the middle of you and your child. And what we want is one person to serve the ball and the other person to receive it, right? And we're going back and forth. And if we look at it in the sense of ball play, which is a very early developing play skill that kids love, quite literally, it's rolling a ball back and forth. Like this picture in the bottom right, or doing some sort of back and forth activity. And this sort of play lays the foundation for back and forth social communication skills like we have with people in our lives all the time. This is also known as conversational volleys or back and forth communication volleys. These strong interaction skills that are developed in these interactions build the foundation for strong communication, play, and social interaction skills. It also helps the child develop a secure attachment to you because they know when I go to throw that ball, my caregiver is going to be there to receive it and throw it back to me. And if we kind of keep thinking in this metaphor of tossing balls, we're going to talk a little bit about what it looks like when we might not be there and we miss that ball. When we're looking at a device or our attention is drawn elsewhere and we miss that that conversational volley. And if you look at the picture in the upper right of a ball on a tablet, right, you see that it's missing so many elements that a real ball and ball play is, right? There's no ballness to that static 2D image. We're not experiencing the sensory sensations that are happening with real ball play. We're not getting concepts like gravity and characteristics that make a ball a ball. We're also not having any sort of serve and return, right? Oftentimes people will kind of use these 2D images to teach children concepts. And what we know about the young developing brain is they need all of the qualities and characteristics of something to really learn it. It's the first time they're learning it. If everything we learned for the first time was a 2D image, we would miss out on so much of what that thing is, right? What does it do? What does it feel like? How do I use it? And you can just see how depriving the experience of a ball is on a device versus a tangible 3D ball. So let's look at another example of screen-based learning versus real-life learning. Something that I see often in my work is, again, a 2D image on a tablet or even a flashcard. And we're trying to, right, we're maybe teaching this child camel, right? Maybe we're, I don't know, working on that vocabulary word for whatever reason. And let's look at what is being taught in these images, right? So if we look at the 2D image of the child with the tablet versus what's going on in these other pictures, we see that so many more senses are being used in the pictures to the right than they are to the left, right? The picture to the right, we're really getting the sense of what a camel is. We might be petting it, we might be smelling it, hearing it. There's people around us that we're probably talking about it with, right? Maybe the kids are saying, ew, you know, do you smell that? Or, you know, look at the camel, look how big it is. And if you see also on the bottom picture, what's happening is the child is doing something that in the speech world we call a distal point. They're they're interested in something and they're using a point to get their caregiver to show interest in it too. I imagine the child might be saying something like, look, a camel. And that's not happening with the device, right? There is no shared attention. There's no co-regulating going on, right? That the child on the bottom left is doing that with somebody. Yes, a caregiver is clearly holding the iPad to the left, but we're not getting all of those social opportunities that we are in the pictures to the right. And if we had to picture that these children in the right were in a bubble, like we talked about in the first few slides, all of these kids that look like they're maybe at the zoo with the animal are definitely in the same bubble. They're all looking at the camel, they're all interested in it, and they're likely all communicating about it. Same with the picture in the bottom right. She's directing her caregiver's attention towards the camels, and they're likely sharing in that activity together. So let's take a look at what a little bit more at what this looks like when young children try and get our attention. So you'll see here again, these children are using that beautiful distal point, and these caregivers are doing such a great job of responding to their child's bid, right? You can see by their eye gaze, they're looking at the same thing that the child is trying to get them to look at. And what we notice here is, let's imagine that maybe in the picture to the left, the child is pointing to a tree or a flower, and baby is pointing, and maybe they say T or fa, or any sound they make in trying to make sense of that item, right? These parents and how they're looking and likely responding is they're going to map that word for the child. So child looks and says fa and looks at a flower, and caregiver says, yeah, that's a flower, right? Maybe we go over and smell it. Maybe we talk about the color of it. Maybe we talk about how it smells. Maybe we talk about, oh, there's flowers on your picture at home, right? We make connections, and that helps children learn the concept of flower. And if we miss those moments to map, it's a real term for how children learn language, we lose it. Right. So if, say, this picture looked different and mom and dad were missing that opportunity to map that word for the child, they might miss that the child was even interested in the flower. They certainly miss the connection to make that label for the child, and that moment is lost. And what we know about young children's brains are these moments of mapping language are when neural connections are made in the brain, and how we support the white matter of the brain. And there is research out now that's saying that young children are actually, we're seeing decreases in the white matter in their brain. And it's because we're missing out on these opportunities to make these maps for them. And if they're not built, unfortunately, we lose them, they die off. And 0 to 5 is the most critical time to form these connections in the brain. And if we're missing it by, directing our being on our devices, we lose these opportunities to develop language and make these connections. So let's look at what might happen if we miss that conversational volley, we miss that ball, we miss that return. What's happening if either the baby or the parents are on the screen, right? We said that someone is missing their turn to grab that ball. They're either missing the throw or they're missing the catch. And what are we saying when we're not there and missing those moments, right? What are we non-verbally saying? We're saying that this screen is more important than what you are attempting to do right now, right? If you're trying to get my attention, you're trying to get me to look at something cool, trying to get me to look at a bird that just flew by, and I miss that, and that happens over and over and over again. Well, as a child, I kind of lose my motivation to keep doing that, because I've learned that I tried it and it's not working. No one's there to catch my ball. So we miss those moments to map, right? And when we miss it, like we talked about, we miss those moments for brain connections to occur. Something else that I see often happens is a missed moment to co-regulate. And an example of this might be, I liked this image on the left because this is something that I see, is we might be playing at the park, right? And child might, maybe they fall down when they fall off the slide, or they fall off the swing or something. And they look to their parent to say, well, how am I supposed to react, right? And now if I was there and attending to them and present, and I saw that it wasn't such a big deal, I would model, a reaction that was appropriate. No big deal, we're okay, right? We wipe ourselves off. Now, if I missed that and I see you, the child, on the floor upset, well, now my emotion might be really big, right? And now baby is looking to me, how do I react? Well, you're reacting like this, so I'm going to react like this. And now we've missed a moment to really co-regulate together because I didn't see what happened. And I can't, as a parent, right, or caregiver, I can't fully be there with you in how you're feeling and really what happened because I missed that moment. And this is something that I often see, not when I'm with my clients out in the community, because this is what we're working on, but I might see it from other community members. So I want to talk about ways that we can solve these problems, right? How can we get to success? And we always want to do real life learning opportunities over screen-based learning whenever possible. 3D in context is always the best way for young brains to learn. And if we look at this picture here, right, we see the baby on the left playing the xylophone. She's holding a tool to make that work. She's working on her fine motor skills with her hand. She's working on her gross motor skills. She's sitting up. She's probably working on some eye tracking and receptive language skills, right? She's listening to the sound of the music that she plays, the cause and effect. And if we look on the right, we see the same thing, but it's 2D, right? We see that the child's hands are much different in the right picture than the left. They're not getting that ability to use tools to figure out how to do things and develop those fine motor skills. And what, again, a question sometimes that we now have to ask is, sometimes parents don't realize that if we ask them, myself and a colleague, if we're doing an evaluation, we say, oh, so how does he do with puzzles? Oh, he does puzzles, no problem. He matches all of the shapes. And we don't press further, and we then later realize that they're talking about a puzzle on an iPad. They're talking about pulling your finger down and matching, red square to red square, green X to green X. And that is just so different than being able to solve that in real life with the three-dimensional objects. And when we're looking at why screens are being used, one of the questions that I challenge people to ask is, well, what is being done on the tablet that can't be done in real life? We look back at the camel example, say we lived in an area where, we would never see a camel. Say, right, I don't live near the Northern Lights. It's something that I want to see. Okay, that makes sense. We're going to look at that in a 2D form because I'm not going to get there in real life. But if we have the ability to do these things in real life, they're always going to be better for babies' development. And I like to also challenge, well, what is actually being taught on the tablet, right? What is it doing that you can't? Even here, if we're thinking of okay, well, we're playing music. Okay, well, let's get some pots and pans. Let's clap our hands. Let's bang our legs, right? What are we actually doing here? And if the goal is music time, well, I could think of a number of things that you could do with just your being that certainly don't need an iPad or even a toy for that matter. So another thing that I try and do in my work with families is try to get them to think about daily routines and when we can incorporate times of day that may be screen filled now, that we can slowly get away from screens and move towards real life interactions. And one of those routines, especially now that we're kind of getting out of COVID and kiddos are getting back out in the community, is grocery shopping. But meal times, diaper changes, car rides, these are all opportunities for learning, right? A little one's brain does not separate learning time from meal time and grocery time. I'm learning all day, every day with the people that care for me. And one of the things that can help, if you look at the child in the upper right, say she's shopping in her stroller here, what is she missing out on, right? She's missing out on certainly all of the language that comes with the grocery store, all of the social opportunities, right? If you're a cute baby, people are coming up to you and saying hi to you. And if I'm on my device, I'm not going to respond to those people. I'm missing out on my, caregiver talking about the shopping list, right? I might say, oh, I got to find those potatoes. Where are the potatoes? Can you help me find the potatoes? And giving the child a purpose is a great way to get them involved. And for young kids, that might be simply holding something, right? You get the item and you give it to them to hold. Maybe it is putting it in a bag, right? You're getting veggies and you put it in the little plastic baggie. Maybe you'll get them to help you find something. We're going to find the carrots. We're going to find your favorite cereal. We're going to find the My Little Pony fruit snacks, right? Just getting them involved in it. And what we want to do is you two are doing it together. It's not you going grocery shopping and they're on the tablet doing something entirely different. It's you're both grocery shopping. And another place that, another time of day that this is great is cooking meals at home, driving places, diaper changes, dressing, really anything that you're doing with your toddler on a regular basis, they can be involved in. Another great example, I touched on a little bit, is meal times. And I want to look at what are the differences here between the photos on the right, where the child is eating with the tablet, and then you see that whole family just on their devices versus the ones on the left, right? The first word that comes to my mind is connection and togetherness, right? Baby is feeding, having his bottle, looking right at his caregiver. We look at the one in the bottom left, the little girl may be feeding them. We're certainly socially interacting here. And so meal times are meant to be social, right? This is how healthy mealtime habits are formed. We know as a society that kind of mindless eating can really lead to an unhealthy lifestyle. And if we're doing that from a young age, where we're just passively opening our mouths, letting my caregiver feed me, and while I'm watching an unrelated, show on my device, really, what am I learning about mealtime here? What am I missing out on? If we even think about the child on the upper right here, he's even missing out on opportunities to feed himself. Certainly missing out on interactions with his caregivers. Is it so yummy? Can I have some? It's hot, let's blow it out. We're just really missing all of those social opportunities. And one of the great things about Jenifer's courses is that it teaches parents how to build these, how to work on these face-to-face engagement opportunities for full sensory learning. And that's what's happening in the pictures to the left, right? Baby is holding his bottle, looking at dad, feeling dad's touch. And in the bottom right, they're maybe talking about the food. You don't see any of that happening in the pictures. I'm sorry, I might have said that backwards, but the pictures with the devices, you don't see any of that happening. So another thing that I think is important for families, and that I often do in my work with families, is getting ahead of problem times, right? If I know this is the time when I usually give him the tablet because it's stressful for me or it's a tough time of day, let's get a plan in place so we can have success and we don't have to rely on that device. One of the strategies that I use with my families a lot is having the caregiver bring something in their bag ahead of time instead of the tablet. And this could be something as kind of, it could be bubbles, it could be Play-Doh, it could just be a little toy car. I had one little guy that loved letters, and we actually gave mom a whole bunch of foam letters, and he would just hold the foam letter. It was time to leave. Mom would usually give him the tablet to help that transition be easier. We started giving him a little foam letter to hold, and he was just fine. He loved it. And this is a time too where you'll see, so the child on the left has the, the real device, and then the child on the right is a device that I don't love, but I do want to talk about how it can be effective. So this is one of those kind of VTech type toys. which do have benefits for young babies for developing cause and effect play. They certainly have great benefits for children with vision and motor concerns that may need some light interactions or toys that move to get their interest. But I've had success using it as what I kind of call a bridge item. And this was a family that I worked with where the little girl really needed that device to when it was time to enter or exit or change an activity, because transitions were really hard for her. And the family made that easier by giving her an iPad, right? And what we do when we do that is, first, we don't let the child really feel those emotions. We don't work though and co-regulate through those emotions, but we also kind of tell them that this is what you need to be okay, right? Well, you're upset, here's this tablet, oh, you're better, right? So now I'm a developing child and I'm realizing, oh, I need this thing to be okay. That's the only way that I can be better. And we did have success bridging this with a sort of, screen-like baby VTech toy. And that was because it gave the child the instant cause and effect that the tablet would. And it also was somewhat similar to something she was comfortable with. So I think it's important to note that, because it's hard for children that don't know how to play to go from using this tablet all the time to here's this Play-Doh, figure it out. You're going to notice, and we're going to talk about that, but those children, what parents usually come back to me and say is, well, they don't know how to do the Play-Doh, they just eat it. So I gave them the tablet back. And to get to that state, we may need to kind of use a bridge item that is a little more techy to get them to the ability to get to open-ended play activities like Play-Doh and cars. And this is something that I talk about with families a lot, is going cold turkey might not be right for everybody. One of the most successful ways that that I work with families to decrease screen time is picking one time of day when you can plan to not use the tablet. And when I say one time of day, I mean one time. If we say meals, don't even put the pressure on yourself for all the meals. It can be one meal. It can be one snack. It can be one car ride a day, when you are going to plan ahead with what you're going to give them instead and how you're going to work through and help them with that time that might be difficult, because we know that the young brain get the tablet and the iPad, these fast moving, high tech motion picture sorts of events. It makes the brain need that sort of stimulation all the time. And it becomes addictive. And just like we wouldn't tell somebody, with an addiction that they need to go cold turkey, we may have to work through it to get to the end goal. Two examples that I think were really good that came from my work with families is we had a little girl that was using her tablet in the car all the time. And again, we're missing out on lots of opportunities. Really, what is a car for, right? I just get in the car, I look at the screen, and now I end up somewhere else. I'm all dysregulated because I don't know where I am. You want me to take it away. You want me to walk into somewhere. I don't know where we are. So we worked on finding activities that she could do that we could then let her do in the car. One was a sticker book. One was Play-Doh. And now she's able to successfully go in the car without needing her tablet. Another was during mealtime. And this was a child that was having significant difficulties eating. And what we noticed was, I'm smiling because in the appointment, in the visit, mom was very scared to not give him the tablet during the meal. And I said, I'm here. What's the worst thing that could happen, right? There's two of us, one of him. It'll be okay. We'll do it together. And what we realized was actually he was okay. He had a little bit of a tough time at the beginning, but once mom then joined him and he wasn't alone in the eating, he actually ate so much better. He fed himself, he was feeding mom, he was asking for more food. And that's because he wasn't sharing his attention between the device and his meal. He was able to fully immerse himself in the meal with mom. And now not only is this child eating much better, but the family does not have to rely on a screen during mealtime, and they can all eat together. So some other adaptations that I use in my practice are pausing what's on the screen and asking questions. This might be for children that are a bit more verbal, but asking things like, what's going to happen next? Even for my really early communicators, if we pause the show, it's sometimes a nice opportunity for them to ask for it back on, right? I have young kids who will go and hand their parent the remote. And if that's the first communication opportunity we can get, I'll take it. They might protest, right? They might say no. You'll see what kind of communication comes when you change that expectation of, oh, we're normally going to keep this whole show on, but we're going to shut it off, or we're going to let you watch, one more commercial, and then we're going to shut it off, putting limits on it. Like I said, pausing the show to allow for communication opportunities, or almost treating the screen like it would be a picture of a book, right? You can pause it and you can point to pictures. Maybe you're watching, Paw Patrol, and you pause it and there's the, pictures of all the dogs, and maybe you say woof, 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 or you name the puppies, or you say puppy, puppy. So there's the ways that you can do that to make it more interactive. You can mute it, right, to add your own language to it. Co-viewing, like we looked at in the first slide, where you're watching it together. It's not being used as a pacifier to just kind of pacify the child while you do something else. You're doing it together. I also think picking a time of day. I have a family who lives in a small apartment. There's one TV and 3 teenagers and 1 toddler. And when those teenagers get home from school, they want to watch their shows and listen to their music on the TV. And kind of talking about this with mom, we decided that because we knew that was going to come at 3 o'clock, we want to really be conscious and make the morning time, when it's just him and mom, screen free, because we anticipate that that's going to happen come 3 o'clock. And, living with 3 teenagers, there's really nothing mom can do about it, but let's then prepare for that and change the times earlier in the day. Another nice way to make this more interactive is offering choices. Do you want to watch Thomas, or do you want to watch Paw Patrol? So you're not just kind of mindlessly putting it on and letting the child just run through show after show after show. Setting a timer. So, that those are sometimes on the TV itself. So you can be kept accountable, right? So, okay, after 20 minutes, that thing is going to shut off, and it's not even on you. Oh, it went off. Oh no, it's all done. Audio only is another great way that I've helped my families who the young children are really into these musical-based shows like CoComelon. We know that CoComelon is very overstimulating. The scenes change very rapidly, and it's a highly overstimulating show. And one of the ways that we can bridge success with this is by playing the music without the just audio only. So I might have a family put the music on their phone, put the phone up on a shelf, and we just listen to the music. Again, using that kind of as a bridge item to move towards singing it ourselves without the phone. But again, for that child, going from screen-based music to us singing was too big of a jump. So we moved to audio only, and then eventually us singing. And that goes along with kind of doing it yourself, right? If you look at the picture on the right here, they're doing it together. So yes, they're on a tablet, but it's happening together. And if you look at the picture on the left, this was a family gesturing for songs, right? So if the child's listening to Wheels on the Bus on the TV, how can we move towards getting them to do the motions themselves. And one way might be just the audio only, or moving towards a video of a person doing it. So kind of a cartoon, video of a person, audio only, doing the gestures yourself. Talking more about bridging, making successful changes here. I do think it's important that we reflect on COVID and how we kind of set up for success when we're busy at home. I often hear stories from families during COVID that said, I had to help my older kids and my younger one was put in front of a screen. We were working from home and I had limited ways to keep my child occupied while I had to do really important things. And I completely understand this. And this is something that I hear very often and I sympathize with families for. I think the expectations changed and we are now expected to work full-time while also caring for our children full-time. And if you look at this picture on the left, I feel like this is very much what we saw during COVID. Mommy has to work, so you just need to do something to keep you quiet. And what we know about young children is they are not meant to be quiet. They want your attention. They need your attention. And, unfortunately, we made the expectation that you have to work and keep your kid quiet. And unfortunately, that's telling the child, this is more important than you. And I want to show you a way that we can help reduce giving them that screen when we're busy. And that is setting up a yes space. And that's really just a safe place for your toddler to explore without having to be kind of safe because they're not moving, right? People often see the device as safe because, well, I know they're not going to move. I know they're not going to cry. I know they're not going to get hurt. And what I see often, and my coworkers, we see this is a child can't do a skill, and that's because they haven't had the chance to try it. And they haven't had the chance to try it because they haven't had safe places at home to explore and develop these skills. And children can really only learn to play if they have the experience to do so. We know that screen time negatively impacts play skills and leads to delays in play skills. And young children learn through play. So if they're not playing, they're certainly not learning. And we see here, so if we go back, these children, family is holding them, but oftentimes we may see children in some sort of contained device that may be a bouncer, a swing, some sort of device where the child does not have free range of mobility. These sorts of devices, a pack and play, a gated area, are much better because the child can move around freely and develop all those wonderful motor and play skills. So a playpen versus a swing is a much better option. And children need free movement to be able to develop all of these important developmental skills. If we look at things we can include in that yes space, again, I understand families want to keep babies safe, especially if they need to work. They want to know, okay, they're not going to put this in their mouths and choke on it, especially if we're looking at kiddos that already have difficulties with their play skills. These are some of my favorite safe toys. We have some soft blocks here, a big ring stacker, big stacking cups, nice big Duplo blocks, and safe teethers and oral motor toys that the children can use in a safe way. I know one of the things that we hear a lot is they just put everything in their mouth, and therefore I don't give it to them because I feel like it's unsafe. And again, we can give them safe ways to put things in their mouth. They will advance past that play skill and then no longer need to put things in their mouths. I think this is important to mention because we often, myself and my colleagues see, like I said, oh, he just puts the Play-Doh in his mouth. Well, he just screams. He hits me. He bites his sister. And I think it's worth mentioning that when we're tied to a device as a parent, we may be missing the child's cues that happened before this that then result in this behavior. So really, are they misbehaving or is it a missed cue? And it might be because, we're not there and we missed what happened beforehand to really understand the situation fully. This can then kind of result in the child getting a reaction out of us, and because we were distracted. And if we aren't tuned in with them in the moment, that might be why they threw the toy, right? So I'm a baby and I'm maybe pointing at something saying, ma, 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 and mom's not looking. So I pick up the nearest block and chuck it at her. And now she says, hey, that's not nice. You can't throw. Well, he tried to get your attention, but you weren't there. So now we see this difficult behavior. And what we want to really focus on is caregivers giving their full attention rather than continuous partial attention, which is me checking in on you and checking on my device, checking in on you, checking on my device. And this is the same for children. They can't develop these really wonderful play skills if they're constantly sharing their attention between what's on the screen and what they're doing. They need to focus all of their attention onto what they're playing. So let's think about takeaways and where to start, because that was a bit much of information. We want to be mindful and intentional and come up with a plan and be prepared for why we're using the screen, right? What am I using it for? Am I trying to avoid something like a tantrum or a meltdown? Am I trying to distract myself or my child from something? Am I using this for a purpose, or is it just to pacify something in the moment? And can I do this with a real object rather than the tablet? And if we can at all leave you with any sort of takeaway, it's that the connection to each other is always going to win and be more important than the connection to a device. And I would challenge any listeners with young children who find themselves overusing screens, either themselves or their children, to do these 3 things and see if there is one routine or time of day when you can do them. And it's do it yourself rather than use a screen to do it. So if it's a puzzle, we're going to do it ourselves. We're going to do it together. So it's not going to be you doing the puzzle and me watching. We're doing the puzzle together. It's grocery shopping, we're doing it together. And it's give it your all of your attention. You're not partially sharing your attention between your child and the device, and your child is not going to share their attention partially between you and a device. And if you can find one small time of day to implement those 3 things, you are on your way to successfully reducing screens and improving your baby's development.
Well, how wonderful, Alyssa. Thank you for all that information. I learned so much. I'd like to know if folks that are watching also learned something. Perhaps you could put it in the chat so we could see what your takeaway is from Alyssa's presentation. It's been very enlightening. So maybe somebody won't be too shy to put their thoughts in the chat. But let's go ahead and ask you some questions. We have to make them a little bit more concise, Alyssa, I think, because you gave us a lot of wonderful information there. So the first question is, does excessive screen time affect gross motor skills? And what are gross motor skills again?
Yes. So gross motor skills, my wonderful physical therapy and occupational therapy colleagues always support me in this. Gross motor movements are any sort of big muscle movement with our big limbs. So our arms, our legs, and this is talking about things like crawling, sitting up, walking, running, kicking, throwing. And what we know about screen use is that it's often leads to sedentary activity, right, or lack of movement. And if we can imagine that a child is in front of a screen more often than they're moving, we can, of course, expect that we're going to see delays in their motor skills. We also know that children who don't have opportunities for safe, free movement in a safe area like a playpen, a pack and play, they're going to develop delays in their communication, their gross motor skills as well, because they're not getting those opportunities to move their body and really develop that strength.
Okay, thank you for that. I think we have time for at least one more here. Let's see. Do you see sensory problems in little ones who use screens a lot? For instance, they have problems eating or they don't want to eat.
Yes. So if we, again, think about screens and how they force our body to be in a sedentary state, right? We are then missing out on all of these opportunities for sensory interactions. We're not going outside and playing in the grass. We're not touching toys with our hands. We're not helping family members cook meals, and we're not participating in grocery shopping. We're not touching our food, right? And if we eliminate all of these other activities with food, we're going to notice that the child doesn't want to eat food. And again, shout out to my amazing occupational therapists that I work with, who always remind me if a child is not touching a food, they certainly will not eat it. And if we are depriving our sensory system of all of these experiences, we're going to have a really hard time with eating, which is an immensely sensory rich experience. I will say that because feeding is such a multi-sensory activity, from how it gets into your mouth to manipulating in your mouth and getting it into your body, I would recommend that any child that has feeding concerns be evaluated by a reliable team of professionals, because we want to make sure that nothing is wrong anatomically or physiologically.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then real quick, I have a question about small motor skills. I had noticed that some kids are using tablets, their hands are not working properly.
Yes.
What's happening there?
Yep. So again, if we think about that picture of the two pictures of the xylophone, right? Just that experience alone, we are getting to manipulate a tool. One of the tools we use most as an adult is a writing utensil. And we'll see with a tablet, children aren't developing that nice dexterity. That we also notice, again, my occupational therapist that I work with, we notice that children are not using their pointer finger to access the tablet. We actually see them using their middle finger and their thumb. Our middle finger is certainly a limb that we do not isolate, except for you know what, but we do not do that functionally often. Yes, it's, again, we're just kind of losing all those experiences with three-dimensional things, and that's going to impact all areas of our development.
Okay, thank you. Well, on that, I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up the questions. You've been absolutely wonderful. I'm so grateful you could be here. And
thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. It was my pleasure. And I think you might have been inspiring to some folks out there. I don't know if you agree, viewers, but you can express your feelings if you want. So anyway, thanks. Take care of yourself.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay, be durable. So let's see what we've got here. We talked about resources. That's what we're going to do next. So I wanted to show you what we've got in terms of those. And the American Speech Language and Hearing Association actually got together with the Screen Time Action Network. They created this beautiful two-pager called Be Tech-Wise with Toddler. And it's really a great reference that you can read very easily and quickly. And it's something you could hang in your house. You could take it to daycare. You could share it, do whatever you want. I put a link in the chat to that, so I hope you find that. And I wanted to show you an excerpt from this. It's a quick review. This says right on the front page how much screen time is recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics for toddlers and babies. So under 18 months, under a year and a half, no screen time. Alyssa was just talking about all the other things that they need to do. They don't really have time to look at screens. because they're trying to bloom their brains and make all those vital connections. There is an exception, which is video chatting with loved ones. And everybody loves those, the people that are chatted with and the people that are chatting. And thank goodness for video chats, because that's the only way grandparents and grandchildren could keep on the same page during the pandemic. 1.5 to 2 years, a small amount, the American Academy, you better believe that it's less than an hour, maybe a half an hour or less. That's high quality programming. In other words, you're in charge of the device, you're in charge of choosing the programming. They don't have the capacity to make those kind of choices. So you can do that. Common Sense Media has some suggestions if you are going to allow some watching between 1.5 and 2 years. And then from 2 to 5 years, a maximum of an hour a day. Again, they're very busy. They've got a lot of stuff to do, and they don't have time to be sitting around watching screens. And the other thing they suggest is to co-view, which is watch together. Again, this idea of commenting on the camel that's on the screen, on the two people that are fighting, help the kid understand, well, why was he yelling at that person? And then you've been watching and you can explain it, and you can get some of those rich words in your vocabulary out there to the child. And that's another opportunity for brain blooming. The other thing I wanted to tell you about was my courses at Durable University. This one is Supercharge Your Baby's Brain and Language Power. There are 5 videos, worksheets, and thought exercises. So this is a combination of some online and then some offline exercises where you think about, what do I want? What kind of parent do I want to be? What are my values? What do I want to make a priority in my life to be able to give my proper attention to my child? And I don't know if Alyssa mentioned, but the broccoli brain is in there. And that is the concept of the child that has a full sensory life and has a lot of face-to-face interaction is actually creating a big bushy brain in there with a whole bunch of neural connections. So there are a couple of videos in the course that shows the broccoli brain going around and experiencing the world and getting benefits from it. But I'm super excited to tell you about something, which is I'm going to start giving the course with live coaching. So that means that I can talk to you while you're, before you start the course, one-on-one. And I think it's going to be, I'm really excited about it. I'm going to learn a lot from you, and I'm going to listen very carefully to what you need, and then I can help guide you as you approach the course and do the activities and things like that. So I'm really happy about that. But I know it's hard to take a chance on somebody. And so it's kind of like, I wanted to tell you that I am available for talking, get a time with me and we'll see if it's a good fit. You can figure out if you want to take your time to do this sort of thing or not. And we can at least, have a chat, and that would be nice. I would like that. So it looks like we are wrapping up here. And I just wanted to say thank you for being here tonight. I'm grateful that you stuck around, and I hope that Alyssa was very helpful. And just give yourself a pat on the back, because you're here, you're curious, you're interested in learning, and that shows that you got this.